On this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, it is draft week, NBA draft week. It is sneaking up on us. Damichael Cole. Ja Morant hosted a youth camp over the weekend, though, and we got a glimpse into what Ja is doing this summer. We'll talk about that. Plus, if you didn't know this, the NBA draft is 2 days. It's on Wednesday and Thursday this year. We'll talk about how dumb that is, or at least I will. And then we'll finish up with the NBA mock draft roundup. Damichael has another mock draft live today. He'll talk about what he did in this draft that's different than previous ones he's put out of the commercial appeal. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ah, yes, the dynamic duo rides again. And for those of you that were hoping that because Kelly was the guest host on Friday, that maybe I was being forced out of Locked On Grizzlies. Sorry, dear listener, dear
back
viewer.
at
It is I, Joe Mullinax, back with my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal. I do want to stress, if you missed that episode, the Friday show, maybe you're taking a long weekend like I was. I'm a man of my word. I checked out that episode. It was phenomenal. Make sure you're going back, getting the Houston Rockets perspective. I've noticed, Damichael, and this might be a good topic. You talked a little bit about this on the Friday show. More and more people are lumping in the Grizzlies and the Rockets, and I don't think that's fair at all from a Memphis perspective. But like ESPN, and again, maybe we can talk about this later this week, but ESPN put out another article just to make me mad. And it talked about how the Grizzlies and the Rockets are in the same contender bracket now, which I just don't see.
At this point, Joe, they're just trying to get under your skin.
I think it's just going to, they're the Joe Mullinax Sports Network, JMSN, I guess, at this stage. But anyway, we'll talk a little more about that. We got actual Damichael Cole reporting to talk about on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. And this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The finals just concluded. Championship parades happening in Boston this past weekend. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Again, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Every time an episode drops, make sure you're with us, and we will have a very full week of content for you here on Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael and I have our plan all set up for the draft itself. Anytime the Grizzlies make a draft pick or a trade, I'll be the one handling the YouTube shorts, doing all that stuff, getting those out as quickly as possible. Friendly reminder that I am old and washed. So Damichael will be staying up late on Wednesday night to get all the intel on the first round selections and all that sort of stuff. And he'll give all that stuff in a solo episode for Thursday. We'll come back together on Thursday's show because, again, if you haven't checked out the schedule for the draft, you need to do so as soon as possible. It's super weird. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But right now, again, we have actual Grizzlies basketball to kind of talk about. Ja Morant hosted a youth basketball camp there in Memphis over the weekend. I've read your piece on it, Damichael, as I always read your great work over the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. And you also pointed out on social media, I believe I've reposted or retweeted, whatever it's called now, your point that Tyrese Halliburton hosted a similar camp.
Promoted through the same brand, Pro Camps.
And Ja Morant doubled the amount of showing up for campers. I don't know why anyone would be surprised by that, except for Indiana Pacers fans. But I digress. Ja being back out there in the public light for a positive reason, anytime you can get that, that's a wonderful thing. And obviously more so than his troubles off the court over the last 18 months, give or take, right? It hasn't been that entire time. His health, right? His health was the biggest story coming out of that camp, and I know other people were there as well. But again, we have you as our wonderful co-host here on Locked On Grizzlies. So he provided a health update. What did y'all have to say at the camp?
There's a lot he had to say. You want to start on the health front? We can start. We can start there. We can work our way back to the actual camp. I think on the Grizzlies basketball side of things, he said that he's expected to be cleared in 2 weeks, which is notable because that gives him, pretty much a lot of time, to go full strength in the offseason. You say, if he's not cleared yet, what is he able to do? Well, anything on the left side of his body. Like at the camp, he was taking left-handed jumpers. I think he even dunked with his left hand a couple times, things like that. but not clear yet on the right side. That's where he had the surgery. He had a labral tear in his. So 2 weeks away. He's basically said, it's kind of been killing him not being able to play ball, but he can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So I think there should be no concern on the Ja Morant health front at this point. Going to get a fully healthy Ja Morant going into this upcoming season. And switching tones a little bit, Joe, is one thing really stood out to me at this camp more than anything. And, sometimes Ja's like you got to read between what he says type person. And I do that a lot with him. And sometimes when I ask him the follow-up question, he'll just look at me and smirk because, I can sense it. I know sometimes what Ja's trying to say.
You are a bit of a Ja whisperer. You are.
Look, there are a lot of words that aren't said through what Ja says to the media that you can kind of just pick up on, and then you can just kind of, circle back to it. And that's kind of what we've done ever since, the incidents 15 months ago, because that's kind of when he kind of became a little bit more sheltered, I would say, in that regard. But anyways, with all that being said, Ja was talking or whatever, and he was basically saying that, I'm surprised, he was like, he didn't expect this many kids to show up. And I'm looking like, dude, you're Ja Morant. Like, what do you mean you didn't expect this many kids to show up? Like, I personally, about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week or so before, I had heard that 400 kids had already been signed up like 2 weeks before the camp. So, I mean, I knew that it was going to be, a larger number than, per se, like Tyrese Halliburton's camp or whatever the case may be. But I asked y'all that. I was like, why were you surprised? You're Ja Morant. You are the face of Memphis Grizzlies basketball. You are one of the biggest faces in the NBA. What are you surprised for? And he looked at me, did the little smirk that he always does when I asked him those type of questions, because he can't say what he really wants to say. And he said, I'll plead the fifth on that one. Now, Joe, as he continued to talk, it was easy to figure out what he was talking about, even though when he pled the fifth, you knew what he was talking about, Joe Mullinax. I knew what he was talking about. But as he continued to talk, he was just talking about all the things that I've been through. And, it kind of made him feel good that 600 plus kids, 650 plus kids showed up to this camp. I was told that there were people from as far as like Cali that came to a Memphis camp. It was the first one he's had in a couple years, so you probably ain't getting any camps out there. But also some people around Ja told me that he's going to have a Murray State camp. He's going to have, probably one in Carolinas, probably in South Carolina, and probably one in Georgia as well. But the Murray State one is going to be next up on the list. So this is about to be an ongoing thing with him. This is kind of part of the evolution and the next step, for him. A lot of people were there as well. Ted Jenkins was there. A couple Grizzlies assistants made a trip. Memphis Mayor Paul Young was there as well.
Noted Memphis Grizzlies fan, Paul Young. I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Young wasn't an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies.
He might be. He knows me, Joe. He knows me, so he might be. Who else was there? Mike Miller, his agent, and of course the whole team Morant was there. But Joe, that stood out to me because it really puts things in perspective from the standpoint of me and you. We're on here always talking about how, man, people are underrating the Grizzlies. It's surprising us, like, but Ja actually, from listening to him talk, like, he really feels like, he is, I guess, for lack of better words, not on the same level as he was before the incident. And I don't think that's the case necessarily. Like, he's not on the same level from the standpoint of, the injuries and all the time on the shelf has kind of, taken some things away from him. But at the same time, he still finished 11th in the NBA in jersey sales. 11th in the NBA in jersey sales, played 9 games. His sneaker with Nike is still doing decently well, especially here locally. I mean, there were so many kids with Ja ones there. But it just goes to show the fact that he still, and I think it's a good thing, by the way. I don't think this is a bad thing. He still feels that he has a lot to prove on the winning people over side of things, which is good. You don't want him feeling like, oh, yeah, everybody loves me back again. And, he still feels like he has to win the people over. So he was genuinely surprised that his camp had that type of turnout.
it's not surprising in Memphis, right? I haven't lived in Memphis in a long time, admittedly, but I'm familiar enough with the community, and I've lived virtually in Memphis or worked virtually in Memphis for a long time now. I do think it's important for folks to understand that if you love Memphis, Memphis will love you back very much. And, I've on a much smaller scale experienced that a bit. I still have folks that I met and worked with, 10, 12 years ago that I interact with, even now. And then on a obviously much grander scale, Ja Morant has shown legitimate love to the city of Memphis, and Memphis loves him back. And Zach Randolph before him was very much in that same boat. Tony Allen, obviously in different ways. I do think this is Ja's first foray into being similar to TA and Zebo in terms of giving back to the community, hosting a camp like this. I think you'll see more of that as part of that rehabilitation process. Now, nationally, and especially in the national media, they are making a bigger deal out of it than Memphians make it to be. And I know you know that, Damichael, being there on the ground in the city. I really do think that part of it is the idea that nationally we always go back to the ESPN Memphis Grizzlies day, right? They haven't done that for literally anybody else. And I think that for
All
me,
access,
for me, they wanted and still probably do if you gave them truth serum.
I know this for a fact.
They wanted Ja Morant
They do.
to be the dude.
Yeah.
Like this is who cares where he plays? No disrespect to Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, all these other guys. There's a reason why the league hasn't taken off in a way, and the media machine has not invested in those guys because there's a difference between those two players in Ja Morant in terms of cultural distinction, in terms of that Allen Iverson effect, which is very real. And I grew up watching Allen Iverson, and I saw the impact that Iverson had, not just on the game itself, but on the things surrounding the game. And that Ja Morant, even now, can still be that player. I think that it's almost kind of hurt feelings in a way. Like we gave you the keys to the kingdom and you quote unquote, messed it up. I'm not necessarily saying he did. But that's my kind of takeaway on it. And I feel like there's a lot of good angles that we could take from that conversation, Damichael, that maybe we can explore coming out of the draft in particular when things cool out a little bit. One last note before we move on, and I will give you a chance to respond to this. 2 weeks, I couldn't help but notice the one time in the summer where everybody kind of comes together that's a part of the NBA is the Summer League. And it is not out of place to see actual NBA contracted players practicing. They obviously go and watch the games, but they also at times practice. Do you think there is an outside chance that maybe Ja maybe doesn't go full speed, but maybe he goes out to Summer League and does some stuff with the Grizzlies coaching staff and those players?
Oh, yeah, definitely a possibility. And now that is a tight turnaround. So, you right now we're talking, June 24th. A couple weeks out is Summer League's 2.5, 3 weeks away at this point. So, that's right when he's cleared. So, I mean, he like you said, probably not 100%, but I could definitely see that. But the fact that he'd be full cleared ahead of that is definitely noteworthy for sure. If he even if he doesn't do much, he might go out there and do some shooting drills and stuff with guys. Yeah.
I want to stress, I'm not saying Ja Morant should play Summer League, although that would be awesome to watch him score 80 points in a Summer League.
Be careful, Joe. People don't know what you mean.
Yeah, I need to specify what I'm saying. A lot of times the players actually practice, the guys that are there watching the games, like Ja sitting front row.
Yeah, Luke Kennard, Xavier Tillman, a lot of those guys did it last summer.
There you go. There you go. So they'll actually just practice, shoot around, whatever. I was asking if Ja might do that. He's not going to play Summer League. I don't think he should. Please don't yell at me. When we come back, here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will cover something that I think is very dumb, and I think Damichael agrees with me. He just can't say it the way that I can say it. We're going to talk about this 2-day draft that's about to come up later on this week. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die whip alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Things like superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one car, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home big wins. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusion applies. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to United States customers. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, I'm going to need Damichael to find the ether beat during the break because I'm going to go in on this two-day draft. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm Joe Mullinax, hanging out with my good friend and co-host, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Make sure you're following him on X if you don't already do so, at Damichael C. You need to turn notifications on. If you don't already, I just want to stress this, okay? Sounds like I'm sucking up to Damichael. You can add. When Damichael got the job at the Commercial Appeal, I was the first person that reached out to him to try to do a podcast, welcome to Memphis, all that sort of stuff, because I read his stuff when he got hired. I thought, this guy's awesome. It's going to be great for Memphis. If you don't follow Damichael Cole on X, you're not as smart about the Memphis Grizzlies as you should be. So at Damichael C, if you want to hear me rant and holler and yell, by all means, at Joe Mullinax, follow me there. Damichael, speaking of ranting and hollering, we went a little bit over at the first part of the show, so I'm going to do my best to keep this condensed. The NBA wants to be the NFL so bad. Right, they have extended this draft to a 2-day draft. The first round is on Wednesday, and the second round is on Thursday. And the second round start time, correct me if I'm wrong, Damichael Cole, is either 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern time. Am I right about that?
It's 4 Eastern, 3 Central.
So not only are people not watching the end of the NBA draft.
Make sure you take your tablet. Make sure you take your tablet to work this week.
Not only that, you are starting the second round at a time where people are still at work. Like, are you banking on the idea that people are going to listen on the drive home? Are they going to make sure they tune in to see wherever that mid-major guy that they had a crush on listening to podcasts in the lead up is going to get to the Houston Rockets? Like, what are we talking about here? I don't understand why the NBA, the only reason is money, to get more content and to fill more time and get more advertising. That is literally the only reason this makes sense. It is not for the players. It is not for the fans. If it was for the fans, they wouldn't be doing it at 4:00 Eastern time on Thursday. Now, if you want to make the first round a bigger deal, I could see those ratings going up. I could maybe see that because the change is like, the first round, they're prioritizing the first round, but it's going to be such a nosedive, and it's going to be it's not like the NFL draft where you're drafting for a team that has 53 people on it. Right?
Second round NFL draft.
These are guys that are going to be two-way. Yeah, these are going to be two-way contract guys. I just don't understand the logic, Damichael.
It's because I, for the most part, agree with you. The only thing, other than the money part of it that you mentioned, where this makes sense is, and this is where, me being in a couple of these, I kind of understand this angle, is those 7 p.m. start times in 2 rounds make for super long nights. And, by the time 2 rounds are done and, GMs have to go talk to media and player call-ins and all these things, I think last couple years, we were probably walking out of a FedEx Forum from the draft parties. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but probably one in the morning. Definitely we would get climbing until a little bit after midnight. So I would assume that part of the thinking is draft nights are just too long, and that's one angle where it makes sense because you don't want to move the first round time up because the first round is prime, right? You need it in that prime time window, but you don't want it going on so long at night, especially like your Eastern time zone people. Might probably not tuning in to the second round, late in the second round. You got Taco Bell commercials playing, while Nikola Jokic is being picked and whatnot. So Maybe it'll be a little bit different in terms of more attention on the second round. I mean, for fans like the Grizzlies, they might tune in a little bit more, right? You got Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams the last 2 years in the second round. But for the casual average NBA fan, I'm with you. It doesn't really appease the eye to those fans that much. The only thing that makes sense is the scheduling part of it. For one, I appreciate it from that angle because it's gonna save me even from writing a couple extra stories. Now I can write a couple stories on Wednesday and then write a couple stories on Thursday instead of trying to cram all these stories in and talk to Zach Kleiman afterwards. So I appreciate that part of it.
Well, I'm guessing a lot of GMs are going to argue that gives them time to reassess the draft board, draft trades. The Grizzlies, again, if there is a way on FanDuel or wherever to make a wager, if you're into that, right? If you're into that sort of thing, will the Memphis Grizzlies make a trade? Literally every year they have made a trade. That's a near stone cold.
I highly doubt they draft at 39 and 57.
Correct. Maybe they stay at 9. I'm with you on that. Maybe they stay at 9. But there's no way they draft both 39 and 57. Some sort of trade is going to happen. So I really am curious to see how it plays out. As a pseudo media member, I remember those days where I was covering from afar and I'm writing a blog post and it's 1 a.m. and I have to wake up in 4 hours. I understand all of those things. So that is a fair point. It's the same argument that people make about not wanting a Christmas Day game, right? How awesome it is the Memphis Grizzlies were on Christmas Day. Wow, we've arrived. But then there's media members who will say, oh, crap. Well, I guess I'm not going to be with my family on Christmas Day.
I was in San Francisco a couple years ago. Merry Christmas to me.
So I understand it from the media side. Let us know what you think in the comments, how you feel about this 2-day draft. I think it's pretty dumb and a clear media grab, or money grab, excuse me. But I am happy for the media like Damichael that get a little bit of a breather. Let us know what you think. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, Damichael has another mock draft piece out today over at the Commercial Appeal. He does something that he hasn't done in previous mocks. I'm interested to hear his logic. Obviously, you can read about his logic over at the CA, but I'm interested to hear his logic here next, here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, when I hear that logic, it's not going to be screamed at me, right? He's not going to say something outlandish to make me mad and then just take the show off on a completely different tangent and tirade. This is not ESPN. This is not Fox Sports. This is Locked On Grizzlies, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And the Locked On Podcast Network has launched Locked On Sports Today, the first of its kind 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, talking all sorts of sports, all sorts of different teams. Check it out on YouTube. Again, Locked On Sports Today. You can also find it over on Amazon on the Free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today. Go and find it once this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is complete. Speaking of this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, it is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports, right? I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but the playoffs are winding down, right? It's summertime. We're getting fewer games. No disrespect to Major League Baseball, but this window between the end of the playoffs and the Olympics is going to be rough. Sports aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, closing out this Monday edition of the show, talking about Damichael's latest mock draft. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Ja Morant, finishing up this Monday episode with my co-host and good buddy, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Make sure you're following him on X at DamichaelC. Make sure you're following me on X at Ja Morant. Between the two of us, we've covered the Grizzlies a long ways, a long time. You've come to the right place this NBA draft week. And hopefully the Memphis Grizzlies make it interesting, right? Lots of different angles and things that they can do. Speaking of that, one of the things that we've talked about a lot here on Locked On Grizzlies is the idea of trading up. It's not something, Damichael, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, you've talked about in the written word as much, at least from your perspective of something that you would do. And you did that today. So why don't you talk our viewers, our listeners through that piece? Again, check it out at the Commercial Appeal. If you're not subscribed, you need to do so, especially this week, but all year long, at least for Damichael's great coverage. What was your idea for a trade up to get the Grizzlies in a better position to get, quote unquote, their guy?
Yeah, so as we've said in the past, if they're trading up, their guy is Donovan King. We're not going to bury the lead with that one. That's the guy. That's who they want. And the problem is, a lot of teams want Donovan King. The Hawks want him, and they have the number one.
Which is shocking, since there's so many people on social media that seem to think that Donovan Klingen's bad at basketball, and yet all these NBA teams that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Get him, Joe.
All these people that are literally, it's their livelihood. They put food on their families' tables, analyzing these things, and they seem to enjoy Donovan Klingen like me. But anyway, I'm sorry, partner. Continue.
No, you're right. And I think his window is number 1 to number 6 now,
which is crazy. If he goes number 1 overall, Memphis has no chance to get him.
It's toodles. Like, you're not getting him if he's at 1. But that range 1 to 6, I think, is firmly where I say his range now. A couple weeks ago, it was 1 to 9, and who knows? I mean, if no trade up happens, he still could fall to 9. But the idea behind that thinking is 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there, teams will either trade up or one of those teams will draft him. And when you get to that 6th spot, which is Charlotte's spot, that's the golden spot. I think I would like to think right now that's the golden spot. 5 in Detroit is interesting, and 6 is the golden spot in this draft. So on the mock draft that you mentioned, I have the Grizzlies trading up to number 6, getting Donovan King, and trading. Basically, they're going 6 for 9, swapping those picks. The Grizzlies add on a lottery protected first, which will look, if you're over thinking to me, I would expect this team to be good for the next 4 or 5 years and not have a season like they just had. So that pick's probably somewhere in the 20s, and if you have the year of years, it's the 30th pick. But so I think that makes a lot of sense. Give up a lottery protected pick, first rounder. You get your guy. You move up to 6. And I think 6 is the spot the Grizzlies can get him. If he goes 3rd, you just heard Kelly the other day, and I saw some of the people in the YouTube comments were like, that's too high of a price. And I agree. But the Grizzlies, that's the whole thing that I've been saying all along. Like, yeah, Houston, the idea sounds good. But, Joe, you've heard me say it as well. Like, the Grizzlies are going to be in conversations. Should not be surprised anytime. And I know people tend to overreact. Because it's the fan. It's like, oh, whoa, the Grizzlies are interested in this guy. Like, yeah, the Grizzlies are probably interested in LeBron James, but what does that mean? Like, the Grizzlies probably are interested, in a bunch of different guys, but at what cost? At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. At what cost? And of course, they're interested in number 3. If Houston's saying, hey, number 3 is available, who wants it? I'll make that call. Yeah, let's see what the price. Maybe you can, finesse your way into something nice. But with all that being said, 3, I just don't see it as a likely landing spot. 4, San Antonio, I really don't see that one as well. And then 5 is another money spot. But at the same time, as I wrote in the mock, 5 comes down to what this new front office thinks of Jalen Duren. That's going to be a revealing. That's going to be revealing for us, because I also wrote that if they don't like him, they're going to get Klingen. That's going to be that guy. If they say, oh, Jalen Duren, he's only 20 years old. And people forget that. Like, Jalen Duren is still only 20 years old. If they say, oh, he's still 20, we're going to bet upside here. Then they'll probably draft Buzelis or someone like that. And that'll put the Grizzlies in prime position. Get on the phone with Charlotte. Look, Charlotte, you got Mark Williams. We can give you 9. We could give you, additional young asset going forward that you could pair with LaMelo Ball and those groups. And the best thing for Charlotte in this case, if you want to make the case why Charlotte should do it, I had Charlotte in my previous mock getting Dalton Connett at 6. If they make this trade with the Grizzlies and the Grizzlies trade up to get Donovan King, I still think that Charlotte can get him at 9, because I think Portland is kind of zeroing in on an athletic wing, whether it's Cody Williams, Ron Holland, one of those type guys. And then at 8, that's San Antonio, and I don't see it happening there. So that's kind of where I am, Joe. But yeah, what do you think in terms of the idea of trading up? I'm very fixated on the idea that a 1 to 6 is Klingen's range, and if the Grizzlies are to make it happen, it'll have to be 5 or 6. and 6 sounds more likely.
I'm with you 100%. I think that I would give up, you just mentioned you would trade 9 and a protected first. I would add number 39 as a sweetener. If Donovan Klingham's still on the board at 6, you get that done.
If you throw 39 in there, they got to do it.
Yeah, there's no reason why they would say no. And if it's for Klingham, it's a home run. I wouldn't do that for Dalton Connect. I wouldn't do that for Holland. Yeah. If Connect or Holland are there at 9 and Memphis, I feel like I've become anti-Holland. I'm not. I'm that do you want to win a championship guy. I don't think Holland helps Baylor,
no Baylor Simon if you throw 39 in there. We don't
That's true. And that's something we'll talk about maybe later on this week in terms of trying to get into the late first round. That's probably where you're going to have to trade into to get that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a tough situation. I think that they see Klingham as the bridge, right? If they are healthy and they have a big that is potentially a better Steven Adams, again, friendly reminder to everybody who's forgotten, over the previous 2 seasons before this most recent one, the Memphis Grizzlies won 112 regular season games. And that was with a player that most people, if I'm paying attention to the right analysts, this guy Klingham is ready to rock right now, assuming health, which is a big thing to say for the Memphis Grizzlies. That guy can come in and get them where they need to be with a traditional big man. That is where I am at.
Yeah.
If they want to not do that, again, as long as they address the problem of needing a center, I'm cool. I think that Klingham is the guy that's most ready to do that at a high level. You can make an argument for Zach Edey, which we may or may not do ourselves here on Locked On Grizzlies at some point this week. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I am interested in seeing how Charlotte would respond to your initial offer. Because I think you're only moving back 3 spots. And I think you sold it well. If Connect is your guy, or Holland, or Williams, there is a high likelihood that at least one of those dudes is there at 9. Because Memphis is taking Klingham in your scenario at 6. And then literally, it's simple math, right? 7, 8, 9.
Two picks.
One of Williams, Connect, or Holland is going to be there, just easily.
Or maybe even both.
And maybe even both. And
I got Devin Carter jumping up to 8. On his mock draft to the Spurs.
That would make a lot of sense for the Spurs. That terrifies me to hear you say that out loud. I wish you had not said that out loud. It's going to happen now. I have nightmares about Reed Shepherd falling to 4, and it's Shepherd and Wembanyama just destroying the NBA. I really hope Houston does take Shepherd, because if it's Wembanyama and Shepherd, just give them the championship starting in 2026. But anyway, let us know what you think about that trade-up option. I sign off on it. I would add the second rounder. And if it's for Klingham, right? If it's just the trade up to get somebody else, I'm not as high on it. But I do think that is a good, viable trade-up option. And make sure you're checking out Damichael's work over at the Commercial Appeal, not just today, but every day. Not just this week, but every week as the offseason grinds forth. Tomorrow on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to continue. It's going to be draft eve, or at least first round draft eve.
Yeah.
We'll do one last kind of look around other mock drafts where people, where the intel's at, all sorts of folks trying to dig up dirt, trying to figure out what everybody's doing in the NBA, much less the Grizzlies. But we'll do a little bit more research on our end, and we'll be even more prepared, especially with Damichael looking into some different lanes of thought where Memphis may be heading going into the draft.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we might have some intel from some draft experts as well, based on what the Grizzlies do. Some guys that are really highly regarded around here. So I should be talking to some people tomorrow, and we might throw what they tell me on the show. I think it'll be valuable information for sure.
It sounds like Tuesday's edition of Locked On Grizzlies, like every episode of Locked On Grizzlies, is a must-watch, must-listen episode. Thank you for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe over on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. And again, each and every day this week, each and every time an episode drops, make sure you are checking us out and making us a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Go check out Locked On NBA next. Go check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or Amazon Fire. Wherever you get your next show, just make sure Locked On Grizzlies is your first one each and every day. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Catch you tomorrow here on Locked On Grizzlies. It is NBA draft week. Our long regional nightmare is almost over. It's almost time to make the pick. See you later.